Let's take a look at how I color graded some footage for a recent project. We'll look at 3 specific shots and talk about how to go from flat to dynamic in just a few easy steps. Okay, so we're gonna jump straight into DaVinci Resolve, which is not only the program that I use for color grading, but also the program that I use for round tripping. So going back and forth to DaVinci Resolve and Premiere Pro to DaVinci Resolve. All of this footage was shot with the Sigma FP on Cinema DNG files. And so yes, the file sizes are huge, but the latitude that you get in post is amazing. So here we are in DaVinci Resolve and we have our first clip pulled up. It's kind of drab, it's lacking vibrance, it's lacking color, but that's why we're here, right? And so this is what the footage looks like right out of the camera. The first thing that I want to point out is that this is an outdoor shot. Newsflash. But the reason that I mention that is because clips that are shot outside tend to handle grades a lot better. And so when you're shooting outside, you generally have proper exposure. In fact, a lot of times when you're shooting outdoors, you're trying not to overexpose, like what happened in the clouds here in this little area. Now, that's not to say that you can't color grade underexposed images, and I'm gonna show you that in an example, but I just find that it's a lot easier and you have a lot more to play with when the scene is properly exposed. So since this is the first clip, I'll talk about the camera raw settings. When you load your clip, or when I load my clips, under decode, the default is usually on project. I changed this to clip, and then that unlocks now all of these settings. And my white balance is set to custom, my color space is Rec 709. So the next thing that I will do is set up my nodes. Now, this is what works for me. This is my workflow. There's no one right way to do things. There may be better ways, there may be more efficient ways, but one right way, I don't think so. And so what I do is I will start with 4 nodes. But I have 4 nodes that I start with, and those are my primary adjustment, my secondary, my color, and the workhorse is Dehancer. Now, Dehancer is a plugin that I purchased. You know, in short, it helps with film emulation. So it's gonna create that film look that I'm after in really all of my work. The first thing that I'll do is go straight to my last node and drop the plugin on it. You'll notice immediately that Dehancer makes its adjustments to the image. But this adjustment is without our settings, right? So we need to make our settings applicable for this clip. So I'll do that by selecting the node. For my source, I'll choose camera, and then I can select Sigma FP, and right off the bat, it starts looking a little better. The first thing that I notice is that the image starts getting kind of crunched a little bit. And what I mean by that is, look at what it did to my shadows. It brought them down below the threshold, no problem. We're gonna fix it, but I just wanted to point that out. But it also brought down the highlights, right? Again, we have more work to do, so let's make these adjustments now. The next thing that I did was choose my film stock. Now, I went through a lot of different options, but the one that I liked the most for this project was Kodak Ultramax 400. And for my film print, I chose a 2383 film print. And so those are my initial adjustments. This is what I usually do first. And so at this point in my color grading journey, this is what I do first. Also, I turn off the film grain. For some reason, this film effect is turned on by default and is really strong. So I turn that off and then I'll turn it back on later. Okay, so now we're in a better spot, but looking at our waveform and quite honestly looking at the picture, we need to make more adjustments. But you can see already that we have a good foundation, and there's some nice browns, some nice blues that have been baked in, and our final result is going to be really nice. So it's time to go over to our primary node. This is where I'm gonna make adjustments to my levels. So my shadows, my midtones, my highlights, my contrast, so to speak. My primary node is where I'll make most of those adjustments. So I'm going to select my primary color wheel, and while watching the waveform, I'll start to slowly raise the lift. And you can see the bottom of the image start to rise, and our picture doesn't look as crushed. Then what I do is come to my gain and basically do the same thing. Then I go over to my gamma and make adjustments. And this is really all just a matter of taste and preference, right? It's gonna be different for every project and every person. It's up to you. And so ultimately I'll get it where I want it and where the picture is looking good. I'd say it's pretty close. All right, so this is what Kodak Ultramax looks like at a base level. And so we haven't made any adjustments to the color, right? All we've done is apply the film stock and adjust the levels a little bit, but we're not done. Next, we will go to our secondary node. And this is where we will make some of our detailed adjustments. But before I do that, let's toggle on and off what our adjustments look like up to this point. So if I hit Option D, I can turn off all of my nodes and see what the image looked like before we started. And then I hit Option D again and see what our adjustments have done. And we're making progress, right? But let's keep going. So I have our secondary node selected, and I do not like this hot spot in the cloud. So I'm going to use this node to fix that. Now I try to make sure that I don't clip when I shoot, but it was a bright day, the clouds are moving in and out, and so this was kind of hard to control. But that's the beauty of Cinema DNG files, which is if there's lost information, we can usually recover it. In this node, I'm going to select my primaries wheel and go over to log. I'll go to my highlights and I'll start to slowly bring that down. And you see, looking at the waveform, how it was kind of flat and chopped off before. Now I brought that down and you can actually see the tonal range. It's not just blown out. And looking at the picture, it looks much better too, right? So if I toggle just this one node on and off, it looks much better. Okay, the next thing that I will do is move to color. Depending on the project and what you like, some people may stop there. I've seen projects that have a very desaturated look and that looks fine, but I didn't stop there, so here's what I did. Over in my color node, I will increase the saturation by 10%. Now I know that there are really complex ways to saturate your footage. Yeah, I just went to the saturation and increased it 10%. And so a 10% adjustment to me feels like a big difference. Now color is always one of the hardest adjustments to make, and that's primarily because of what your adjustments will do to the talent's skin tones. What I do is start by making small adjustments to try to get the skin tones right. Now, Resolve does have a scope that has a skin tones line, and if you keep the skin tones on this line, you're usually safe, but I didn't use that, so yeah. So if I toggle on and off, we can see that we've added some life in the form of color to this image, and I'm happy with how the skin tones look. So I will go back to the dehancer node, and this is where we start to make the final adjustments and add a film look. The first thing that I'll do is I will come to my film compression and I'll enable that. Then I will go to my film effects, which is really grain, halation, and bloom. Now, they have more than that, but I didn't use any of those for this project. So I will go to my grain and I will enable it. Now, usually 35mm ISO 250 is too strong, so I will reduce that by selecting 65mm ISO 50. And there are other options, but this is the one that I chose. I added halation and I just left those settings where they were. And I think for this one, I did not add bloom because I had a quarter black promise filter on the camera. And finally, that was it. I don't know if you can see the grain in the final image, but it's there and it really gives the image some texture. So this was the grade that I did just kind of on the fly here. Let's see how close it was to my final grade. I don't know, they're both right in the wheelhouse of where I want this image to look. The sky's not blown out, the image has a little pop to it, and the colors are nice and earthy. So that was clip number one. Let's go to clip number two. In this second clip, I had a few more nodes than just the base 4, but let's see if I can recreate this look for demonstration purposes, and I'll show you guys what I did. So this is what the image looks like right out of the camera. Again, flat, boring, not ready for an audience. So I'll go to a good frame and freeze it right there. And I'll add my 4 nodes and drop the enhancer on the last node. And the initial settings are going to be the same as the previous example that I just showed you. So choosing the camera, the Kodak Ultramax 400 film stock, and the 2383 film print. And with those 3 adjustments, here's what my image looks like. I'll turn off the grain and get right to work. All right. I can see, again, that my blacks are a little crushed. So I'll go to my primary node and my lift adjustment and fix this. Raising it until the image starts to look good, and then I'll make my adjustments to the gamma and the gain. And I forgot to label my nodes. See, not perfect. Okay, now that I've made my primary adjustments, I notice that the color of the image is a little bit warm. And you can see that in the waveform. So there are a number of ways to fix this, but what I'm gonna do is go to the camera raw setting and adjust the color temperature here. This is the easiest fix to me. So by lowering the color temperature in the camera, I cool the image off just a little bit. All right, and this was okay with me. I wanted a nice cool look for this shot, not to mention, you know, it's more balanced. Okay, so on this clip, the next thing that I did was go to the color node so that I can add my saturation. And again, like in the last clip, I increased it by 10% like normal, and I like the saturation, but I don't like what is happening to his skin. So what I'm gonna do to fix this is qualify his skin so that I can make the adjustment on it independent from the rest of the image. So if you hit Shift H, you can see what part of the image you will be adjusting. So I've got my qualifier tool selected and I've selected his skin. Okay, so now currently the way it's set up, if I make an adjustment, it's going to affect the walls and his skin. I don't want that. I just want to affect his skin. So I can come down and refine the selection, and my options are luminance, saturation, and hue. And the biggest refinement is when I was adjusting the hue. And now you can see that the one thing that I'll be affecting is, you know, his skin tones. Let me denoise it. So now that I have his skin tone selected, I'll adjust his skin only. And I feel like this is another one of those areas where minor adjustments will go a long way. So I'm not gonna do too much to his skin. All I did was pull some of the red out, and that was good. Let's toggle that grade on and off, see what we've done. And I like that. Now let's add some film effects, halation, bloom, and film grain, making sure that I make the same adjustment on the film grain that I did in the last clip. All right, and for the most part, I like the way this looks. It's really close to my final image. But there was one thing that kind of bothered me, and that was the window. Window looks a little bit too hot. So I can fix that by making another node and qualifying the light coming from the window. And now I can adjust the brightness and make it where it isn't, you know, blown out. Nice. All right, I'm liking the way that looks. Last clip. Okay, so this clip gives me an opportunity to show how I color graded a dark scene. Everything around the talent is dark, the walls, and we're really just kind of looking through this doorway. And this is a really cool, moody, dramatic setup. If you look at the waveform, you'll see that all the levels are just played way, way down. So how do we color grade this? Well, the first thing that I'll do is set up my 4 nodes and label them. And this is just kind of a rhythm. I don't know that you get into. Everybody's color grading process is a little different. As you can see, mine is very simple. So with my initial settings, the scene is still really dark. So I'll go to my first node and I'll start lifting this scene out of the mud. I'm watching my waveform and just trying to get those bottom values off of 0. And I do think that you have to be careful when you're shooting a scene that's really dark or underexposed. Lifting it too much in post will start to make your image really noisy. So the next thing that I'll do is in my secondary node, I go to my color bars and start to make minor adjustments there. And this was just to give the image a little bit of pop or contrast. And I'm liking the way this image is looking so far, so we can go to the color node. In the color node, I lifted my saturation to 60%, and immediately I think this image is too warm. Yeah, so let's see if we can make some corrections to that color. Now remember, color doesn't take a lot. A little bit goes a long way. And so I'll toggle this on and off. And you see how this minor tweak in the gamma made a big difference. I'm liking the way this looks, and I think I want to start adding my film effects. And so I'll add film grain with the adjustments that I usually make on that, the halation and the bloom. And immediately the scene just has more of a film-like look. It has texture, it has character, and you know, it looks like a nice shot, right? With the motion and everything. It just, you know, everything's just working, you know what I'm saying? And the last thing that I did on this one was kind of dial in some more details on the film look. So I think when you have too much bloom, it can start to make the image look dreamy, and that was definitely not what we were going for. But with these subtle adjustments done, I was ready to move on. Let's toggle this on and off and see what we've done. And we've definitely done some work. We go from this boring look, which is what the camera is supposed to give you, to this much more interesting look. And just a side note, when you're shooting, make sure that you remove all of your film equipment from the shot. I mean, look, we got flags down here, you know, we got frames, you know, diffusion frames, my backpack, you know, the extension cord on here. I mean, one would say amateur. That's fine. I don't care. I'll get better. Actually, I shouldn't say I don't care. I do care, but you know, it's done. If you like this content, then subscribe. If you like seeing my mistakes, if you like seeing my successes, subscribe. I'll see y'all in the next one. You know, be blessed, stay inspired, and always shoot for the difference. Check out some of the stuff that we have going on at the channel. We want to stick around on YouTube for a very long time, and we need your help to do that. So do me a favor and subscribe, like, comment, and share, and we will keep creating great content. Thanks.